Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely.
Today we're taking a look at Shoghi Effendi's The Advent of Divine Justice.
Oh yeah, that's a powerful one.
Yeah, and it's been influencing people for almost a century, so
Right.
It's pretty incredible to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to kind of dig into it with you.
Yeah.
What I think is really fascinating is that, this book wasn't written in like some ivory tower somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
It was written in the 1930s.
Right when the world was,
Yeah, like the world was on the brink of war.
Yeah. Fascism was on the rise, and I think what's interesting is that the Baha'i community itself was also still very young.
Yeah, it's really, that context I think is super important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
To understand like the weight of this book and
Absolutely.
like, guidance that Shoghi Effendi was giving.
And the hope, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was really a time of uncertainty.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this backdrop of global turmoil. We've got this, kind of young community that's looking for guidance.
Right.
But let's get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
What is this divine justice that Shoghi Effendi is talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. He didn't see it just as a theological idea.
Okay.
He saw it as this force that was always working in the world, shaping events,
Okay.
Guiding humanity towards this higher purpose.
Okay.
It was more than just a concept. It was a reality for him.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so can you give us an example, like from the book,
Sure.
of how he saw this force in action?
Yeah, so in The Advent of Divine Justice, he talks a lot about like the fall of empires and how new orders arise. He sees these huge historical shifts as part of this divine justice that's unfolding.
So even when things seem really chaotic.
Even when things seem chaotic, he sees that ultimately truth and righteousness will prevail.
Yeah, even if the road is really bumpy.
Yeah. So he was seeing this happening like in real time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And what's even more, he thought that the Baha'i community had a role in all of this.
Wait, so he's saying this community, which was, as you said, very young still, is somehow like a key player in this.
That's right.
Yeah.
He saw them as this kind of microcosm of the world, almost like a model for the future. They were supposed to embody these principles.
Okay, so give me an example. What kind of principles are we talking about?
Well, things like unity,
okay,
equality, compassion, those kinds of things.
So it's not just sitting around and waiting for justice to happen.
No, definitely not.
It's actually about, like, doing something.
He calls on them to be active, to build a new order.
Oh, wow.
Based on justice and unity.
That's powerful. One thing that really struck me as I was reading the book was how Shoghi Effendi connects prophecy and history together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the fascinating parts of this book.
It's almost like he's, making this argument for the Baha'i Faith as part of this much bigger story.
Right.
Can you give us an example of how he does that?
Well, he brings in sources from the Bible, the Quran, and Baha'i scripture.
Yeah.
To show that the Baha'i Faith was, like, predicted.
Okay, so, like, it was meant to happen.
Yeah, kind of like it was anticipated.
Okay.
For instance, he takes that idea of the new heaven and new earth from the Bible and connects it to the Baha'i idea of a unified world.
Oh, wow.
You see. And then he also uses the Islamic idea of, like, the hidden imam.
Okay.
And connects that with Baha'u'llah.
Right.
The prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith.
So it's like he's taking all these different threads.
Exactly.
And showing how they all point to this.
Yeah, he's creating this really rich tapestry.
Oh, yeah.
To show how important the Baha'i Faith is.
Okay, and this brings us to this really fascinating idea of the Baha'i era. Right.
What did Shoghi Effendi think this new chapter in history was going to look like?
Well, he believed it marked this big shift in how we think.
Good.
Like a shift in consciousness.
Good.
People would be more aware of how connected we all are.
Okay, so like this idea of oneness.
Exactly. The oneness of humanity.
Okay.
He envisioned this world where people understand that we all share the same destiny and we need to work together to build a global civilization.
Yeah.
Based on, justice and unity.
So it's not just like the outside world that changes. It's like how we see ourselves and how we understand the world around us.
Exactly. It's a really fundamental shift.
Wow. This is already giving me so much to think about.
Yeah.
Before we move on, though, can you talk a little bit more about this Baha'i era?
Sure.
What does it mean for people today, like especially for those who maybe aren't as familiar with these ideas?
Okay, great question. So Shoghi Effendi actually believed that this shift in consciousness, it doesn't just happen on its own. Okay.
It takes like real effort.
So we can't just like sit back and wait for the world to magically become more just.
Not really, no.
We have to actually like do something.
Exactly. And that's where individual transformation comes in.
Okay.
He thought that, change starts with each of us.
Okay.
Like looking inward, examining our own hearts.
Right.
And our minds.
So it's not just about changing the systems, like the stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
It's about changing, like, ourselves.
Yeah, he puts a lot of emphasis on developing spiritual qualities.
Okay, like what kind of qualities are we talking about?
Like generosity.
Okay.
Detachment from material things. A sincere desire to serve humanity.
Oh, okay.
These are the building blocks of a just society.
That makes sense. Like, if we want to see more kindness, more justice in the world, we have to start by cultivating those things in ourselves first.
Right, exactly. Like, be the change you want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But he doesn't sugarcoat it.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
He talks about these challenges as tests.
Tests, like trials and tribulations.
Exactly.
Okay.
He saw them as opportunities to grow.
Okay.
To learn, to get closer to the divine.
Okay, so when you say tests, can you give me like an example?
Sure. Think about like a time in your own life when you went through something hard or, had a setback.
Right.
Maybe it seemed unfair at the time or hard to understand.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But looking back, maybe those experiences actually helped you.
Yeah, I can definitely think of a few times when I went through something that felt really, really tough at the time.
Right.
And it forced me to kind of like reassess things.
Yeah.
Re-examine my priorities and like learn something new about myself.
Right. And he's saying we should see these challenges as opportunities.
Okay.
Not as punishments.
Interesting. So instead of getting discouraged by setbacks,
we should see them as like stepping stones.
Yes, exactly.
I like that. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And it's not just about individual growth either.
Okay.
He talks about tests that whole communities go through. Even like entire societies.
Okay.
Like the stuff happening in the 1930s.
Okay.
Totalitarian regimes, threat of war.
Right.
He saw those as tests.
Okay.
For all of humanity.
So how do we like pass the test?
That's where the idea of unity and diversity is so important.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Okay. That's kind of a central Baha'i principle.
It is. It is. It's both the goal and the method.
Okay.
Recognizing our shared humanity, but also celebrating our differences.
That's such a beautiful idea.
It is. And Shoghi Effendi thought it was critical for overcoming these tests we face.
Okay.
He really believed that true unity comes from embracing all the richness and complexity of being human.
Okay, so it's not just about tolerating differences. No, it's about like actively seeking them out, learning from them, seeing them as strengths.
Right, it's a big shift in perspective.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yep. But is it really possible?
Shoghi Effendi believed it wasn't just possible, but essential.
Okay.
He saw unity and diversity as like the antidote.
What?
Prejudice, conflict, division.
Wow. So if we can learn to value each other's differences, we create a society where like everyone can thrive.
Exactly. And that's what leads to a more just society.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he also emphasized that it takes effort.
Okay.
To build these bridges of understanding.
Yeah, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
It feels like we're constantly being bombarded with like polarizing opinions.
Right.
And it's easy to just kind of like retreat into our own little bubbles.
Yeah, and he challenges us to be active.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, he believed that real dialogue, collaboration, can only happen when we approach each other with humility.
And a desire to learn. We all have something to teach each other.
Right.
Even when we disagree.
Okay, so it starts with listening.
Yeah, truly listening.
Not just waiting for our turn to talk.
No.
But actually trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
Exactly.
That's tough.
It is.
It's much easier to just like write someone off if you disagree with them,
Right. It takes practice.
Yeah. It takes effort and it takes a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones, for sure.
Right, exactly.
It's almost like Shoghi Effendi was like anticipating these challenges that we're facing today.
Yeah.
You know, he's giving us a roadmap for navigating this really complex world.
He was really prescient, you know?
Yeah. He understood that the path toward unity is not going to be easy.
It's going to be filled with obstacles.
Yeah, so what does that like conscious effort look like? What can we actually do in our everyday lives?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Shoghi Effendi reminds us that it all starts with small acts of kindness and service.
Okay.
You know, it's about bringing these principles of unity and justice into our daily lives, our workplaces, our families, our communities.
So we're not waiting for some like big world-changing opportunity.
Yeah, not really.
It's about like making a difference right now.
Right here now, yeah.
Yeah, in the spaces that we're already in.
Yeah, it could be something as simple as reaching out to a neighbor who's different from you.
Okay.
Or volunteering your time.
Right.
Or speaking out against injustice.
Yeah, it's about like taking those values.
Yeah.
And actually putting them into practice.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like think globally, act locally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Shoghi Effendi believed that these little acts, when they're multiplied across a community, they become this powerful force.
That's really empowering.
You
have to think about like that because those big problems in the world can feel so overwhelming.
They can.
But if we all just focus on what we can do in our own little corner of the world, it starts to feel a little bit more manageable.
Right. And he also talked about the importance of education.
Okay.
As a tool for change.
Yeah, that makes me think about the role of parents, teachers, mentors, anyone who's like working with young people. It's a big responsibility.
It is.
To instill these values early on.
Yeah, he believed education should be about more than just knowledge.
Okay.
It's about building character.
Okay.
A sense of responsibility for others.
And he also believed that education should be for everyone.
Yes.
Not just like a select few.
Yeah, he saw it as a human right.
Okay.
And essential for building a just world.
It's amazing how all these themes we've been talking about, divine justice, transformation, tests, unity, education,
like all connected.
They all kind of tie together.
They do.
Yeah, it's like they're all part of this bigger picture.
Like threads in a tapestry.
Exactly. This deep dive has really been incredible.
I agree.
It's given me so much to think about, not just about like the Baha'i Faith, but about my own life too.
Yeah, it's a book that really makes you think about the big questions.
Yeah, and for our listeners who are feeling inspired and maybe a little challenged by what we've been talking about, we want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What's one thing you can do this week, no matter how small, to bring these principles of divine justice into your own life?
Right.
Maybe it's reaching out to someone who's different from you.
Or having a hard conversation.
Yeah.
Or just taking some time for reflection.
Whatever it is, remember that even small acts of kindness and courage can make a difference.
They can.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the advent of divine justice.
Yeah, thanks everyone.